Welcome to WinImpact, the Women in Impact Investing series. Emily and I are from Just Invest, and we're your hosts. Just Invest is a tech-driven asset manager that provides outsourced portfolio management for tax-efficient direct indexing and ESG for financial advisors. On WinImpact, Emily and I speak with rising women leaders in finance who will discuss their perspective on impact-themed topics. Today, we have a guest whom we're very excited to introduce. She's a woman who has climbed the ranks in wealth management while implementing thoughtful impact investing themes at her firm. We're excited to hear her insights on implementing impact as an advisor.
That's right. Today on episode 7, we're talking to Reegan Rae, co-CEO of Arnerich Massena. Reegan's experience spans more than 14 years, during which she served as a registered principal and firm relationship manager at M Security Holdings, the broker-dealer for M Financial Group, and as a financial advisor for AXA Advisors. She has worked with Arnerich Massena for more than 8 years, crafting the firm's wealth management service model as managing director and working directly with clients as a senior investment advisor, developing and executing client investment programs and managing client portfolios. Reegan has volunteered as an I Am Learning partner in Arnerich Massena's award-winning I Am Learning Partnership Community Service Program. She is also on the board of trustees and chairs the investment committee for the Oregon Ballet Theater. Reegan, welcome to WinImpact.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Rosanna. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, we are so excited to have you here. We'll jump into the first question. According to BoardX data, only 6 out of 11 CEOs at the 107 largest US public financial institutions, including 4 companies with co-CEOs, are men. Reegan, there aren't many female-led wealth management firms with over $7 billion in assets under management. Can you tell us about your decision to become a financial advisor, and what are your thoughts on gender diversity in finance in general?
Yeah, so my decision to become a financial advisor, it was sort of an interesting path. It wasn't super straightforward. I've always been drawn to the field of psychology, and I picked it as my major in undergrad, as I love to study how our minds function, and especially how that affects our behaviors in any given context. And I think as I graduated and looked to choosing a career path, I just really wanted to help people and see my work add value and make a true difference in lives. So I spent some time in doing informational interviews and had an opportunity to start in the financial services industry as a registered broker assistant with a private client group. And I just remember I was immediately hooked. I really enjoyed that client relationship component, getting to know these families, really helping them identify what their goals were. And I really wanted to create an environment that felt safe and approachable and unintimidating. So that was sort of my goal as I developed my practice over the past 14 years. In terms of gender diversity and finance in general, such a great question. I have so many thoughts. I could talk to you for hours about this. I think it's eye-opening that in 2021, this industry is still so far behind other industries. I mean, the statistics are pretty staggering still. Only 15% of financial advisors in the United States are women. And then, 1 in 5 are executives or board members. So we have a lot of catching up to do, to say the least. And I remember I was at a conference a few years ago and sat through this presentation that was really talking about the importance of creating gender balanced teams. And so, back to my psychology brain and nerd tendencies, Thornburg did this study where they were trying to determine what traits a prospective client wants to see when interviewing a new advisor. And I think what they were really trying to tease out is, do men tend to want to work with men, and do women tend to want to work with women? And what they found was really interesting. The result is that clients value having gender balance within a firm from the top all the way down. So there's no correlation to men choosing women men choosing men or women choosing women. It's just having that balance and representation is really important to them. And that has stuck with me. And, I'm just so proud to be the new co-CEO of Arnerich Massena, as we've had gender balance in our executive team since the very beginning. 30 years ago, we were founded by Lisa Massena and Tony Arnerich, and I'm just so proud to see that thread weave its way through our firm history to where we are today. And then the final thing I will say on this topic is, we know that creating diverse and inclusive teams, especially in the boardroom and in the C-suite, leads to improved long-term outcomes. So last quarter, when our advisory team did our quarterly reviews with our clients, we shared just the results from the Wall Street Journal study that was conducted in 2019, where they reported that the 20 most diverse companies in the S&P 500 had better operating results on average than the lowest scoring firms, that their stock generally outperformed those of the least diverse firms. Isn't that fascinating?
Yes.
And yet, female representation on those boards overall remains low. Like less than 2% of companies have boards consisting of gender balanced teams. So I like to look at this through the optimistic lens and say there is a huge opportunity out there for companies to enhance their performance by integrating diversity and inclusion into their hiring protocols.
That's great. The optimism is appreciated, I think, in these times. And in your bio, you've actually mentioned another gap, which is volunteering with Arnerich Massena's I Am Learning program. This program is dedicated to closing the achievement gap and assisting young students to meet state benchmarks by enriching academic skills and providing support and mentorship. So could you tell us about how this program was created and how are you tracking the effects of the program?
Yeah, sure. I love any opportunity to talk about the I Am Learning program. So the program was started in 1994, about 3 years after we started the firm. And it really came from our founders' desire to really give back to the community in a more meaningful way than just writing a check. And they were very interested in the elementary education system and the issues of underserved students not meeting state benchmarks in math, particularly. I mean, we're a financial firm, but also reading. And so we created tutoring programs for students in one local elementary school that was very close to our office. And over the years, we have expanded those academic and enrichment programs to include before school tutoring, which is done with all employees of our staff, are the volunteers, as well as after school clubs, like homework club, STEM club, and girls club, which is really fun. Then we also do one-on-one literacy intervention as well as free summer camps. So typically in one school year, there'll be about 1,200 employee volunteer hours, and we typically serve on average about 200 students. So it's a pretty big impact. And of course we track, because we are, financial people, so we love data and we love numbers. So the Portland Public School System actually has a data gathering system that we track this information on, and on average, about half of the students that go through our program reach their grade age benchmark by the end of the year, which is huge. And nearly 100% of the students see some measurable improvement. So we get a lot of really positive feedback from the parents, the teachers, the students, and also our staff. They find it just so rewarding to start with a kiddo at the beginning of a school year who's really struggling and get to watch their process and improvement over the calendar year. So, we're creating an impact in multiple levels there.
That's really impressive to hear, and love the fact that you can apply data to such an important cause as well. Um, this actually dives really nicely into our kind of the next topic here, which is according to Bank of America study earlier this year, the climate mitigation market is poised to double by 2030 to over 2 trillion annually, $2 trillion. In other discussions, you've noted the environment, no pun intended, is changing. And investor clients are more familiar with ESG investing and want to integrate it into their portfolio and financial planning. Arnerich Massena's tagline is investing with intention, a concept Just Invest has been trying to generate awareness for since our inception through direct indexing. We'd love to know, what does it mean to invest with intention for you and Arnerich Massena?
Yes, I love this question. So where we sit today, looking into the future, the world will confront a broad range of sustainability and social challenges stemming from a growing and aging population, limited natural resources, a changing climate, as you mentioned, and a lack of diversity and inclusion, which we've sort of hit on already. And again, to be optimistic, we envision a better future that's made possible by the innovators and the entrepreneurs and the inventors, and believe it'll be the capital markets that will lead the way. So for investors, this presents tremendous opportunities to participate in the development of the future, both to make a difference and then also see that long-term portfolio growth. So intentional investing is a conceptual framework for constructing portfolios for long-term success. And I really think that it's sort of turning the process and conversation on its head. In the past, it would be an investor comes to an advisor and says, I want, X rate of return. And the advisor chooses the stocks and bonds and whatnot and constructs a portfolio and then hands it back to the client, and the client's like, okay, that's what I need in order to get to that rate of return. Now it's very different. It's saying, what are your values and your missions and your principles, and let's intentionally choose each company or fund that goes in that portfolio, and it's a reflection back to the investor so that they understand everything in there is serving a purpose and has a role. So I think it's a really empowering, unique, very engaging way of portfolio construction.
That's great to hear. And I think it's so interesting how you turn the framework on its side. So there's something that we've mentioned in a previous conversation, which is that you and Arnerich Massena invest in high impact areas like water resources, sustainable agriculture, fishing, healthcare, and clean energy technology. Can you tell us a little bit about how this works? Are you implementing impact investing in both private and public investments?
Yeah, thank you. So we create customized impact portfolios that can include both public and private investments. It really just depends on the client and the investment opportunity. So for example, with Just Invest, clients are able to target the areas that are of the greatest value and meaning to them with their investments in the public side. And then we core around Just Invest and have focused our research on some key thematic areas, all of which are central to that overarching philosophy of investing in what the world needs. So examples would be water, food and agriculture, renewable and efficient energy, healthcare and life sciences, and then of course the broad gender lens investing, diversity, inclusion theme. So with these themes, we have both public and private opportunities that are on the leading edge of developing solutions and creating impact. And we've identified some really unique opportunities in the private space, and these companies are making remarkable impacts and offer incredible opportunities for growth and return. So one unique example that I love to share is a company by the name of Source Global, formerly called Zero Mass Water. And they have developed a technology that is it's called the Source Hydro Panel. So it looks like a solar panel that creates drinkable water by pulling water vapor from the air using only solar electricity. And this company, again, tying to that water theme, is having a massive impact on bringing water to populations that struggle with accessing clean drinking water. And I think that we take that for advantage sometimes here in the United States, just a simple thing to have clean water that oftentimes is sort of the foundation for your health. And Source has been bringing drinking water now to thousands of communities across the globe. And if you really think about it, that task of sourcing water is a daily chore that oftentimes is completed by women and children. And in some instances, they walk for hours and very long distances. And it's important to note this as it keeps children out of school and keeps women out of the workforce. So this really strikes a chord with me in my heart. So Source is in a all-girls home in Kenya. These girls have been saved and rescued from child marriage and other similarly devastating cultural practices. And the impact of Source is that it's eliminated about 2 hours a day of time that they've spent gathering water and reduced a lot of time and cost for them to seek medical support for the ailments that they can create when you drink water from an unhealthy place. So now that time and cost can go back to their education and their work. So just a simple thing of clean water is transforming the social construct of a community by supporting the education of young women who would otherwise be part of a negative continuous poverty cycle. And it's providing the opportunity to advance the economic capability of the area. So I just love sharing this story, and there are countless other examples of how Source is making a difference, and other private and public opportunities are making a true impact.
Wow, thank you so much for connecting those dots for us on such a powerful, powerful story there. That's really amazing. Thank you. So, as a senior financial advisor and managing partner, you've had client-facing roles at Arnerich, and get to talk about a lot of different topics, like the important one you just shared with us. How do you generally talk to clients about impact investing, and bringing it to current day? What sort of trends are you seeing now?
Mm-hmm. Well, the topic is so interesting, impact investing. I mean, we've been trying to introduce this topic to investors for years, call it 15, 20 years. And conversations were sort of falling flat historically. And now clients are way more informed and asking for more information and opportunity like I've never seen before. So I would say we're past that early adoption phase of impact investing, and are at the beginning of that majority funding time period or era. And we can see this just in the flow of assets that are coming into this space. So last year in 2020, US investors added like 5 times the amount of flow of funds than we've seen in any other past year. So there really truly is a movement. And I think it's also really exciting to report that sustainable funds are actually outperforming their conventional peers, with about 35% of them finishing in that top quartile of their Morningstar category. So, I think it's here to stay for real now. And the COVID crisis has also reshaped the economy and just heightened that level of awareness on environmental, social, and governance factors, which again is going to create that huge potential for new growth in the space. I think it's also really important to note that the demographic of investing is shifting. we're at the beginning of this great wealth transfer in the history of this country. So it's estimated that there'll be $30 trillion that will transfer over the next several years from that baby boomer generation to that next generation. And that inheritor of the wealth just have different values and they see the world through a different lens. And so these women and millennials will be the primary wealth owners by the end of this movement. And the research shows us that they want to invest for a greater good and leave the world in a better place than how they found it. So our role as advisors, education is a huge component of the discussion. Impact and ESG investing has such a variety of definitions. Depending on who you talk to, it can be really confusing to navigate what I call the alphabet soup: ESG, SRI. Then you add in concepts like impact and green and mission driven and divestiture. I mean, it's crucial to explain the differences and how they all fit together. And I think that's our job, is to really help build a narrative that can get them closer to connecting to their own personal values with their portfolio construction. In terms of trends, I like to break it down by saying, starting with the fact that the global population is expected to increase to 10 billion people by 2050. And so how do we meet the demands of this growing population while mitigating the unintentional consequences of this population's need? So a few examples and statistics to prove the point. Let's go back to water. So it's expected that our demand for water is going to grow by 40% over the next decade. Yet only less than 1% of the Earth's water is available for use. And half of the water in developing world is lost due to insufficient or outdated infrastructure. That's an incredible opportunity for innovators and entrepreneurs to get in there and come up with some great solutions. I think another big topic that's on everybody's mind in terms of climate change and resource efficiency. You have the EU making their big statement not too long ago that they aim to be carbon neutral by 2050. And of course, here in the US, you had California come forward and say they're going to join that goal. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to get in there and create carbon neutral solutions. And the list just goes on. Life sciences and healthcare. I mean, after coming out of the pandemic of the last year, a lot of infrastructure and innovation went into come up with a vaccine faster than we ever have in human history. But it goes beyond that. 1 in 10 people have rare diseases, and only 5% of those diseases have treatments. And there's more than 560 medicines that are currently in development. So there's so much innovation, research, and development going on in that space. So again, we think it's just really exciting to get behind the innovators and entrepreneurs and invest in the solutions to manage the needs and opportunities. I think, another major trend, I think the S and ESG, the social part, will likely receive the most notice as social justice comes to the forefront culturally. And there's just a universal desire to address those social imbalances, and a lot of effort is underway. I'm sure you've seen this too, just in investors looking for businesses that are either women or minority owned, or prioritize diversity and inclusion, or that are sensitive to racial and gender disparities. So there's a lot of opportunity out there to cover. The landscape is huge.
Yes, and thank you for covering those points, Reegan. I think so many advisors and investors are hesitant to really go into impact investing because of this fear that maybe they're going to lose out on returns. And I love how you just emphasize there are innovators and entrepreneurs and so many opportunities in the space. So before we end this interview, I have one last question for you. Abigail Johnson, President and CEO of Fidelity Investment, says, No matter how senior you get in an organization, no matter how well you're perceived to be doing, your job is never done. So Reegan, what comes next for you? And at a company whose tagline is invest with intention, what advice do you have for our listeners who may be interested in adopting more thoughtful practices?
That's a great question, Emily. I would say my focus as the new co-CEO is to honor the history and legacy of my firm. We're celebrating our 30th anniversary this year in 2021. And I'm just so proud of this organization. We have a remarkable reputation as leaders and innovators in terms of how we think about investing. And so I intend to carry forward those values and philosophies that have served our clients well. And the second part of your question, my advice to listeners who want to get involved in these practices would be to understand that you can vote with your dollars. You have the means to drive real change, to help the world for the better through their investments. And the challenges facing us as a society have never been greater. And we encourage listeners to join us in this movement that will reshape the world. And I think it's a perfect time to just reevaluate their investment strategy and look at what will really make a difference, both to the world and to your portfolio. And the good news is that there's so many companies out there working hard to build and craft a better future for us all. So, we help clients implement a more thoughtful portfolio and show them that it makes a significant difference when they invest with intention.
That's amazing, Reegan. And, congrats on the firm's 30th anniversary. Didn't realize that was another milestone. So what an important year that they're able to mark with your entrance as co-CEO. And I have to also say, every time I take a sip of water from my hydro flask, I am going to be so much more grateful for what we have here. So thank you for that awareness. This has been great. And Reegan, it's just amazing having you on the series with us and sharing the important work you do and how you help clients invest with intention. So this is a wrap for us. Listeners, please visit justinvest.com to access all of the resources mentioned during this interview and to learn more about investing with intention. You can also follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. And until next time, let's continue to win impact together. Investing done just right with Just Invest.